Hello, you are listening to On The Topic podcast, the only show on the South Coast that likes to roundhouse kick crappy pop culture into the sea, but we don't kick people down the stairs. This week, I'm waxing on and waxing off. I'm Dan.
Always good. And I am judo chopping that wooden block. I'm Alex. And yeah, welcome back, guys, to another episode. And this week, we've been promising for a while, we're going to be delivering, as Dan said, roundhouse kicking and punching our way through this one. This is the review, I guess it's a review, Dan, isn't it, of seasons 1 to 3 of Cobra Kai.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're not quite aware what this is born out of the 1984 film Karate Kid. I mean, the other ones are largely, I think, forgettable. So for me, don't worry about those. We'll talk about the first one, I think. This is a direct follow-on from that. Now, Dan, have you got a lowdown on what that film was?
The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know, I never really got into the Karate Kid growing up. It was never really my thing. I know it's got a cult following. Yeah, I mean that's probably why I was never really interested in seeing Cobra Kai. But you and some friends kept selling it to me. I was like, all right, I'll cave in. I'll binge watch it, and that's pretty much literally what I did. I binged it in about a week or two. You don't need to be a fan of the Karate Kid to enjoy this, I don't think.
No.
I mean, you get the flashbacks, which are sort of keep it relevant. But I mean, I'm sure even if you haven't really seen the Karate Kid, you sort of know those famous moments, right?
Mm. Well, they're pop culture, as you mentioned at the beginning. Dan, wax on, wax off. That comes from the first film with Pat Morita's Mr. Miyagi as he trains Ralph Macchio. Or Daniel LaRusso, which we'll touch on many times throughout the episode. But it's all around, back in 1984, a 16-year-old Daniel moves from New Jersey to California. He's finding, I think it's first of its kind, Dan, in terms of the films at the time. So it was very martial artsy. I mean, there were martial arts films out there, such as Bruce Lee, but they were quite hardcore and quite bloody for the time. Whereas this is more like a Bruce Lee for children. And this is all about, how Daniel moves, finds his way in high school, falls in love with a girl, and of course the girl is with another boy, the bully of the school, we'll find out. And they end up being trained by different dojos and different senseis. And the theme of this will then, again, in the 30 plus years, will follow through then to Cobra Kai. Anyway, there's a competition, and the bully and Daniel go head to head, and Daniel wins. Now, that's not a spoiler alert. It's been around for 35 years. So if you haven't seen it, I'm not really spoiling anything. But this is directly then afterwards. So they both go away, they do their thing, they live their lives or not, as the case may be. And this is where it picks off in the TV series. And I think seasons 1 and 2 down, when they picked up as a YouTube Red series, it found its feet in YouTube, I think.
It did, yeah. And then I think Netflix picked it up, and then ultimately we got season 3 at the start of this year. Yeah,
and it's flown. And, millions upon millions of people are celebrating it. They love it, and I think the mixture of drama and comedy, I think it's even described as a drama comedy. In fact, people love it, and we love it. So we're going to talk about this in this episode. What we're going to cover off, Dan? We're going to cover off. Was it some of our favourite scenes?
Yep, so we're going to talk about our favourite character.
That's it, yep.
Or characters. Favourite moments from series 1 to 3. And then we'll be talking about favourite fight scenes, because I mean, there's plenty in there, and I know you've got some of your favourites as well. And I don't think yours is necessarily a big one, from what I can recall.
It's probably understated, but I think it's in the grander scheme of things. It's a goodie.
Favourite character development. I'm going a bit left field with this, and I sort of dive a little bit deep into a character that I think people probably won't expect me to.
Okay.
And then I think we've got some questions around season 4, which I think we can sort of discuss and theorise about.
Yes.
But before we sort of dive in, I suppose, Alex, if people are only sort of just starting to watch Cobra Kai, we need to do the spoiler alert klaxon.
We do. Let's dust it off. It's been a couple of weeks. Let's give it a whirl. There we go.
Good old klaxon.
It's a goodie. Yeah, so where do you want to kick off, Dan?
Let's start off with favourite characters or favourite character. Now, I've only got one, but it just has to be Johnny Lawrence.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's probably my favourite character. I mean, this, let's say, Cobra Kai sort of follows on from decades of... I mean, Johnny's still greatly affected by his disillusionment with Kreese. He's lost Ali forever, his the ex-girlfriend. And he's sort of still suffering verbal abuse from his stepdad, Sid, who, I mean, we sort of meet a couple of times. He's just a bit of a dickhead, isn't he?
Oh, he's a massive arsehole. Absolute massive arsehole.
Even when he's getting paid back, he's still being a dick to him. It's like,
make no bones about it, they are not close.
No. I mean, Johnny's very bitter. He's divorced. He's working as a handyman, putting the TV on the wrong wall. He's stuck in the past, doesn't understand the world of the 21st century. And to be honest, smartphones and the internet just baffle him. And I think the great thing is that modern music actually makes him feel sick. Like he's nauseated by it.
Lots of classic rock, isn't it?
Yeah. And most galling of all, he has to see Daniel LaRusso's success everywhere. Wherever he goes, he's bombarded by LaRusso auto dealerships. So it's just a painful reminder to him of where his old rival succeeded and how he's failed. I mean, he's got a son, Robbie, who we meet in season 1, and their relationship's very strained. You know, Johnny's neglected him his whole life, and Robbie's very resentful towards his father, and he's sort of bent on everything he can do to make Johnny suffer. But, you know, he's trying to right the wrongs. He's expressed a desire to make amends with his son. And then, of course, he meets Miguel.
He does. Who I think he ends up really... It sounds quite grand, but ends up saving his life, I guess, Dan. It really gives him purpose where he hasn't actually had it for a good 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of makes Johnny attempt to become a better and a more honourable person. I mean, even sort of, I think it's the tournament in the end of season 1. I think it's episode 10.
Yes,
he actually scolds Miguel and Hawk for their cheap moves in the tournament, and you know he actually tells them that he won't tolerate their cheating. It's just not on. He actually advises Miguel to be merciless. And granting his former sensei Kreese a second time, he gives him a second chance as well. You know, he's sort of into giving these people a second chance. You know, we know Kreese is not necessarily a nice person. He still isn't. You know, unfortunately, leopards don't change their spots, I'm afraid. But
indeed.
I mean, ultimately, I think we sort of learned that Kreese was probably the closest thing to a father that Johnny actually has. I mean, I think that's probably why he gives him a second chance, right? I mean, Johnny actually sort of shows that he still cares about Miguel after advising him to be merciful and be a better man. And I think he's trying to sort of instill Miguel the things that he wants him to be and not how he was sort of growing up and sort of becoming that bitter man. I also quite like it, actually, that he develops a crush on Miguel's mum, Carmen.
Yeah, it shows the warmer side to him, as you say. He's rejected technology. He's stuck in the 80s in both the cars he drives and music that he plays. He's a raging alcoholic, and he's dragged into enjoying the rest of humanity as a result of his relationship with this teenager, and ends up having the hots for his mum, which is in itself quite problematic. You're a star student and having the hots for his mum, but nonetheless, it is an interesting kind of side to Johnny that we don't see. He prides himself on being the hard man, doesn't he? There's a warmer, softer side to him. Not too much, but softer side to him, to his love interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think when he sort of initially shows an interest in Carmen, he's sort of disappointed to find out that she's already got a boyfriend, and he's sort of out one night. I mean, he's basically an alcoholic. He's in a bar. He's necking his beer, and he discovers this bloke. He's basically just chatting up other women in a bar. So he confronts this bloke in an alleyway outside, and basically kicks the crap out of him. And says, like, you go near her again, because I know what you like, I'll kick crap out of you even more. I mean, great, right? And then, of course, they sort of move on, and him and Carmen get closer and ultimately become an item.
I think that's, again, just shows the more nobler side to Johnny. We haven't really seen, we don't see it in the films. We see it from Danny's perspective, and this is now from Johnny's perspective. He's very much the main character of the series, and he's not all about bravado. He does the right thing sometimes, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, he's trying to become a better man, and I think it's hard to not admire that. And I think that's probably why he sort of stands out as my favourite character. I mean, I could have picked from a whole host of people. But I think when you sort of see like people going through their sort of different arcs, you sort of find you start to dislike them more. But then you go back to liking them again, and I'll sort of touch on that in character development. But I think regarding sort of arcs, I think Johnny's is very linear. You sort of see him trying to rewrite those wrongs, which is why I've chosen him. And that wraps up my favourite character on my side. What's yours? And then we'll talk about some of the listeners.
I think we're going to dovetail into your favourite development. I've got an inkling, Dan. But my favourite character is Eli.
Hawk.
So what I'm going to do, just so that we don't overlap, because I think that is your favourite development, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about some of the bits I like, and then perhaps we can talk together about the favourite development. But to jog the listener's memory, Eli is the meek wallflower, I think I've put down in my notes. The quiet, sadly bullied geek, for want of a better term, using high school terminology, of the school. And he's best friends with Dimitri, and they both they love Harry Potter, and they love sci-fi and Doctor Who and the rest of it, and they share that fondness. And they both end up, Dimitri, Eli, making friends with Miguel when he also suddenly moves to the area. So again, there's all these synergies with Daniel from the first film. Anyway, poor Eli, he was born with a cleft lip, which means that his lip had a join to the underneath of his nose. It's a natural thing, and most of the time, actually, it's dealt with at birth. I understand it, but in the procedure, it left him with a scar. Now, he is in the storyline. He's bullied by the bullies, and it ends up he is quite withdrawn, and he doesn't look people in the eyes or gets head down, as I understand and can empathise with this character. And it ends up then through a series of events where Miguel ends up going to join Johnny and create this dojo through, I think, the first couple of episodes of season 1. Miguel gets into a fight, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's one of my most favourite fight scenes ever. And he impresses both Dimitri and Eli, and they end up joining. Now, of course, Johnny's a bit of a dick, isn't he, Dan? I think it's fair to say. And he also jumps on the old bandwagon, the unpleasantness of pointing out this scar. And so he decides one day that he's going to flip the script, I think is a term.
Yes. Yeah.
And he ends up next day, coming in, and he's got this mohawk, and he rips off his robes, and on his back is a sprawling eagle, very majestic. Eagle, which in itself is quite a funny scene, right? He's all tattooed up. He looks very, very different from what he was the previous day. And like anyone to actually endure all that tattooing and have that all ready for next day. But anyway, he turns up. He's got this massive black tattoo and his mohawk. And thereon is he known as Hawk. He is born a fighter, and it's just such an interesting character, Dan, from going from polar opposites to this very quiet and downtrodden young man to, well, we'll talk about his character development in a bit, but he ends up going through this interesting way of becoming the hard man, to some extent the bully in season 2, season 3, to then some redemption. And I think it's an interesting one because he always wants to try and get away from Dimitri, his childhood geeky friend, and Dimitri will let him forget it because, of course, they were best friends. Well, they were best friends before. They split in dojos and different philosophies. But there's something quite interesting about Hawk, I find, just because he gets all the girls and he ends up becoming the poster child of Cobra Kai. And again, that's the comedic elements, of course, is so different from the beginning. And he ends up being kind of the alpha male. Although Miguel ends up becoming, the champion, I think Hawk ends up taking the lead. And I think he's so well acted, Dan, by Jacob Bertrand. And I think he is phenomenal in the way he portrays his character. And whenever he's on screen, you're always going to crack a smile. And I just think he's a wonderfully written character to kind of show that inner struggle of this sounds really deep now, inner struggle of a growing young man to take on kind of responsibilities of right and wrong and doing the right thing versus getting some payback. And you see that in season 2 and then a bit of season 3, and I think he's great, and he's a wonderful character. I think alongside that, I think, yeah, you're right. Johnny for me is also my second favourite because everything. I mean, they even line up the series right on YouTube. I think the favourite clip they like to use is where he sat down with Miguel by the curb, and they're talking about the illegal kick that Danny had in the first film, and how he barged his way in and stole the girl and then illegally won the tournament. And actually it's quite an interesting perspective that Johnny gives the viewer, because we only see it from Daniel's perspective where, he's a new kid on block, he gets picked on and he wins a tournament even though he's got a broken foot or whatever. And it's very kind of like chivalry and knight in shining armour, but from another perspective, his hot shots come in from New York and he's disrupted the whole school and ends up making the cool kid in town, the downtrodden. And I think he breathes fresh kind of light into the showdown, I think, for me. So
yeah,
everything that you said, spot on. It shows the demise of the cool kid. We always want, don't we, Dan? I think every couple of months we always go back to growing up and secondary school, high school, and just how universally it's a shitty time. Growing up is a shitty time, isn't it? No one likes. People like the school experience, but there are bits which people prefer obviously not to go to, and it's universally understood. And Johnny wins, I think, at high school. He is a popular kid. He has the popular girl, and loses all that because after high school, right, you're nothing.
Yeah,
you're in the world of work. You got to pay your taxes. You got to work for the man, and you got to meet like-minded people, either in the workplace or university, or whatever. Johnny didn't do any of that. He's still living in this bubble, and it is quite funny, but also quite sad that he's stuck in this time bubble, never moved on. So for him to be brought into the 21st century by Miguel and understand what speed dating is and kick the booze and become a better man and become this sensei, I think is great. And it does make you empathise with this otherwise quite hideous character on paper. So for those reasons, I think Johnny is great. He's got a great sense of humour. Actually, the writing of these characters is brilliant, Dan. I just want to say, most of the characters, as you say, all bar one, I have got one of my most hated characters, actually.
Really?
So before we go to listener, I just want to slap that in there. But most of the writing's spot on. And Johnny's is so good. You can empathise and you can sympathise and you can understand and you can still think he's a dick while still kind of understanding his motivations. And yeah, for me, Johnny's a close second.
I'm intrigued now. You've got an unfavourite character.
Yep.
Let's do it. Let's find out what your unfavourite character is, and then we'll hit up the listeners.
Robbie Keane, Dan.
Oh, okay.
Robbie Keane. Now, I have to say apologies because this is harsh, and he's never going to hear this, but apologies to Tanner Buchanan, who plays Robbie. He can't fucking act. He's actually the worst actor to grace Netflix, and the reason why I'm saying it is everything that I've seen him on, which is unfortunately too many seasons of Cobra Kai, and Designated Survivor, who is Keith Sutherland's, who is the president. He's the child of Kiefer. His acting's wooden, it's appalling, it's boring, it's dull. And I'm sure part of it isn't his fault because the writing doesn't really play clearly to this character. So his storyline's a bit rubbish. But his acting abilities are as much as a block of wood, which is being smashed by that judo chop. It's terrible, Dan. There's no likable elements to the performance. The character is just a bit dull, isn't he? He's a bit of a wet blanket. His mum's also a dick. Shock. His father's estranged, Johnny. He tries to make good. He's not interested. He steals with his friends. He tries to turn it around. He ends up living with Daniel LaRusso, of course, is the arch nemesis to Johnny. But he just looks so smarmy and he's boring and there's no depth to the character. If you look at Sam, you look at Miguel, you look at Hawk, Kreese, Tor, I'm reading off all these characters that are so well written. And yet, Robbie's boring as fuck. I'm like, why am I watching this? Why are you spending so much time watching this really poor actor contribute to what is otherwise a stellar show? So for me, Dan, he ruins it. There's two shows which he ruins, and thankfully he's only in a couple of episodes in Designated Survivor, which is a phenomenal effort, actually. And again, Netflix brought it in to breathe new life into season 3. He's shit in that, and he's shit in this. So equal poorly written as he is poorly acted, for me, Robbie Keane is appalling. He can get in the scene, and we haven't said that in a while, but he can actually be designated to the Mariana Trench because he's just wasted screen time.
That's some deep sea there, mate.
100%. And I don't think I've ever felt that way about a character, but apart from being a plot point to piss off Miguel and be the love interest for Sam, and okay, yeah, it's interesting dynamic, you know, having the rivals and then the switch where LaRusso takes in the son of the rival. Great storyline, but that's it. Otherwise, it's poorly executed. Look, I'm not an actor, Dan. I can't act for shit. And that's why I'm sat down in front of my mic talking to you on a podcast, because that's probably the best that I can do. Creativity, and even then, you may argue whether it's top notch. But this guy, I mean, yeah, everything I've seen him in is appalling. So that's a big no-no for me. But look, guys, look, always get in contact to let us know if you disagree. And that one, that could be quite divisive, and it could be quite a shock. But I would challenge anyone to tell me anything that's quite redeeming about either the actor or the storyline. Okay,
I'm going to shoot from the hip. I've got an unfavourite character.
Oh yeah,
Tori. Hate her. Can't stand her. I know, I get it. She's a survivor. She's had to be quite a tough woman, growing up. But she's just a dickhead.
Yeah,
she's a dick.
She's very overly aggressive for... She has to be, I guess. But I just wonder whether she's overly... I I don't know if I'm going to come across very well. She sounds overly compensating, but I guess she would be because she's next to who's the other lass who's the friends of Miguel, who ends up joining the dojo at the beginning.
I know who you mean. I can't think of her name.
I can't recall her either, which is really bad of us because she's great. Aisha.
That's it.
Played by Nicole Brown. She's great because you don't expect to be a fighter and she kicks some ass. But Tori, I just think she's overly aggressive. Again, not really much of a fleshed out background, Dan.
I think we'll probably get a bit more depth into her season 4, I reckon.
Perhaps.
Because there's some fan theories going around, which we'll sort of talk about sort of at the end when we sort of dive into some questions around season 4. But yeah, she's not for me. Bit of a dickhead. No one needs to get out spiked wristbands to wrap around their knuckles in a fight.
Yeah, it's a bit much, wasn't it?
Bit of a rule breaker. Don't like her.
I mean, I can understand kind of the bad girl kind of attraction to Miguel. He gets with her to piss off Sam, and again that rivalry. They position season 2, season 3 as Sam and Tori being the new Johnny and Daniel or Danny, but. Yeah, I think she's just a bit over the top. I don't know.
I don't particularly like Sam either.
Do you not?
No, I just find her a bit of a wet blanket, but I just want her to sort of just lose and just sort of grow a little bit as a character. Like she just seems to sort of like meek away from little things. I mean, season 3 is okay. I mean, she does get the old stick out and she takes on Tori in that little fight at the LaRusso house. I mean, I know we're diving into fight scenes at the moment.
She got sliced and diced, Dan. Yeah, she took one for the team in the high school. How can you say that?
I don't know.
PTSD from it.
Just a little bit wet for me, but I think there might be some sort of character development in season 4, and hopefully we'll be discussing that once that comes to light and we can binge it in a week and get an episode out of it. But on to our listeners. First up, we got Leighton. He got really involved with this episode. He's a big fan. I think Johnny Lawrence is going to be a popular choice of favourite character. He says Johnny Lawrence by far. Bad guy done good, bit of an edge, sexy, cool, tough, and just the all-rounder.
Oi. Sounds like me.
Yeah, you're an all-rounder, Alex.
Thanks, mate.
Next up, we got Leah Holford, who we did the interview for at the start of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
Shout out to Leah.
She said, I want to do it to Johnny Lawrence. Is that the kind of thing you're after? So we got talking. I said, sure. Paul Messer Photography. Going to drop his name in there. They're an item, by the way. She went, it's okay. Paul wants to do it to a few characters in it too. And I was like, okay, elaborate. And apparently Paul loves LaRusso's wife and Carmen. Yeah,
played by Courtney Hengeler.
Daniel LaRusso's wife is a very attractive woman.
Yep.
And then so's Carmen. Who would you choose out of the two? You can only have one.
It'd be Mrs. LaRusso, I think, Dan.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I think she'd look quite charming on my arm if I took her to the ball in season 3.
Definitely. I could see you, Alex, just suited and booted. Nice suit, shiny shoes, taking in Mrs. LaRusso.
Well, I'm not sure my missus would be quite happy with that imagery, but yes, in an alternate timeline, perhaps.
Will the missus be listening to this episode?
It's unlikely, mate.
I think
get away with it. Get away with it. Yeah. Mrs. LaRusso, for sure.
On to favourite moments. So a lot of my favourite moments sort of stem from that rivalry of Daniel and Johnny. And I've probably got about 4 or 5 moments which, again, they sort of tie into the two. And I think it's hard to not love these moments, especially if you sort of go through each season. I mean, I binged the hell out of them. These are like definitely memorable moments for me. So there's a moment in the first season where you see that rivalry between Johnny and Daniel is awoken from a 30-year coma, basically. There's a lot of pent-up aggression. They're out on the backyard patio at Daniel's. You know, Johnny's just had his car trashed by. Daniel's cousin.
Yeah, blown up, wasn't it, by some bikers as well?
Yeah,
make that up. They did. They firebombed it, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They torched it. They trashed it. They torched it. So if I was in Johnny's position, I'd be pissed off too.
Yeah, man.
If you trashed my car, I'd go straight to Daniel's house, and they're about to go for it, and then Mrs. LaRusso walks out, and she's like, "Do you want to come for dinner?" And Johnny's like, "Yeah, sure." So, I mean, this is where they sort of go down this drive down memory lane. So Mrs. LaRusso manages to calm down the two Karate Kids, and she tasks Daniel with helping Johnny get a new car from the dealership. I mean, obviously, Daniel's not happy. He doesn't want to give his rival a free car, but, he sucks it up. He's like, okay, let's do it. So they go to the dealership. They pick up this car.
It's a Ford Mustang. It's a beautiful thing.
And he gets it all done up, doesn't he, with the Cobra Kai logo at the front, yellow and black.
Yeah, the lovely interior. It's beautiful.
But they go for a drive, and they end up in a bar where they reminisce about the old days. But of course, I mean, these friendships don't last forever. There's always something that sort of comes between them to strain that relationship again. My second favourite moment is the Mexican dinner.
That is, I mean, yeah, you're probably calling on some of my one, but I think the dinner, I think, is just pips it for me, and definitely made my list too.
So this happens in season 2, and this is where we start to get like small nuggets of that camaraderie between Johnny and Daniel.
Yeah.
It's all culminated in an accidental double date. Johnny's taking Carmen out for dinner. Who happens to walk in but Daniel and his wife Amanda, who are also looking for a fun evening at the Mexican restaurant. But ultimately they end up having dinner together, having a little dance, and they bond essentially over some salsa and nachos.
And brilliant. Tequila, I think.
Yes.
And always goes down well. Do you like tequila, Dan? I don't recall whether we've shared shots before. We must have shared shots before, but I don't think we've ever done tequila together. Do you like tequila?
I do. I'm a big fan. It's got to be good tequila, but it does give me a bit of a rotten hangover. I don't know about you.
Really? Strange enough, I mean, I used to work at a pub. That's a bit of a segue here. I used to work at a pub. Just turned 18, so just legally allowed to sell stuff. And my first night, back in the day, used to tip you. It's quite an affluent part of South London, if there's such a thing. And they tip you, so you keep all your tips at the end of the day, and then you just help yourself to the bar. It's already spent anyway, in terms of the register. And of course, I had a shit ton of beer, and then we did shots to welcome me. That's the only thing, obviously, you do is you christen a new employee to a pub. And it's about 1 o'clock in the morning now, as you watch all of the pub fights outside the pub. You're in lockdown, effectively, just watching. The nice lockdown, not the bad lockdown we've all had in the last year. And we were doing Sambuca. Oh, fuck me, Dan. I think it's given me... I still feel physically sick now. And I don't think I've really touched Sambuca since. That's a good, it sounds like really old, 15, 18 years ago now. But I can't do Sambuca. The smell of it just literally makes me want to throw up. I'm done.
Oh man, Black Sambuca gives me bad memories. I
can even have absinthe. I can have absinthe, and that stuff is, in some parts of the world, that can make you blind. But no, just Sambuca for me just doesn't do it. But no, perhaps when it's all over, Dan, we go back to the pub. We'll get round the shots.
I'm going to digress a little bit. I need to share a drunken story as well.
Oh yeah.
So Black Sambuca. So I'm like, I can't stand the stuff. Just the smell of it. It always reminds me of horrible nights out as well. You go into the tacky Weatherspoons and
yeah.
The bar's all sticky and stuff. But yeah, anyway, my memory of Black Sambuca is it was the last gig of my second year of my high national diploma. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really doing much that night. I'd sort of fallen out of interest in playing live music with my classmates. I was in a band, as people will remember. I was in Catch Me a Comet. And I was sort of pushed out into the cold by my classmates a little bit because they all went on this trip, whereas I was busy supporting Wheatus and stuff. That's what happened. Anyway, so I was on one song that night, and friend of Catherine Comet, Brendan, lovable dude. He comes along, the only person really there to support me that night, and he was like, "Nah, let's just get shit faced." And he was buying black Sambuca all night, beers. Walked up to Ken's Fried Chicken after the gig, got a burger, went home. I had the worst headache, room spinning, but I slept it off. And poor Brendan messaged me the next day, and he said, "I've been sick," and apparently he managed to somehow vomit on the ceiling.
Wow, that's
impressive, but equally disgusting.
Gravity defying.
So yeah, anyway, we digress, and back to our favourite moments of Cobra Kai. Season 3 is when we see the return of Ali Mills Schwarber. I mean, only the Schwarber part of the name was thankfully on its way out.
Not shawarma.
No, although I'm quite partial to a bit of shawarma.
I don't think I've ever had shawarma, Dan. What is shawarma? Like
It's just basically a kebab, isn't it?
Is it?
I think so. A chicken kebab, I think. But again, when it's safe, beers and shawarma.
Yeah, man. All over that.
All over it. We see the return of Annie Mills. She's still quite an attractive lady, from, I think we met her in the first film.
Yes.
She's had an even bigger glow up, shall we say. But they go to the country club. And, Johnny and Daniel both turn up. And I suppose it almost sort of forces them both to be a little bit more mature. And she sort of ends up bringing out the best of both men.
Yeah.
A bit like Mr. Miyagi. She brought them balance. It's quite a nice moment. And then finally, for my favourite moments is Johnny gets saved by Kreese. And I think, again, this is sort of a bit of a parallel to Star Wars within Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Kreese is definitely the Emperor, wouldn't you say? And, I'd say...
Oh, 100%.
Johnny's Darth Vader.
He's behind the scenes. He's pulling all the strings.
Johnny sort of fully turns away from this dark side and chooses to square off against the supreme leader Kreese. And, it's quite a battle in this dojo. I think ultimately Johnny ends up taking out his own son by accident. I think he pushes him into a locker and sort of ends up getting knocked out. But, Kreese sort of ultimately gets the better of Johnny. And then out of nowhere, Daniel turns up and he sort of uses the moves that he learnt from, I can't remember the guy's name now. He sort of goes to Japan, doesn't he? And he learns these moves.
Chosen.
That's it.
I'll talk about that one in a second, yeah.
Yeah, no. So he ends up sort of giving Kreese dead arms and legs and, I genuinely thought one of them was going to snuff it in this scene as well,
100%.
I genuinely thought Johnny might have gotten stabbed by the sort of the karate knife, or Daniel was going to get taken out by a shard of glass. But no, both survive. Spoiler alert. And they sort of confront each other like, well, we'll see you at the tournament. We'll do it fair and square. We'll play by the rules, but I don't think they're going to play by the rules in season 4, Alex. Just can't see it.
And I think that's going to be an interesting, challenge for both of them to kind of understand how they overcome the Cobra Kai dojo playing by their own rules and not Kreese's, because he has none. So they've got to do it fair and square, but the fight won't be.
So that's my favourite moments. Have you got any, Alex?
Yeah, I got a couple. I think it's season 2 where Danny ends up going to the beach, and I think it's sunset. And he sees someone fishing. It's a throwback to the film where Mr. Miyagi goes down to the beach and fishes, which is obviously a bit odd It was odd back in 1984. It's still odd now, and he has a double take, and it's just a random surf dude. But because it's backed by Sony Pictures, they can actually use the footage from the films. So it's not as though it's being shoehorned or there's a reference, but they can't actually use stuff from the films. They can, and they lift it and they layer it in, and it's shot for shot. And they superimpose the 84 image onto 2018 or whatever it is, or 2019. And it's really quite a touching moment. And look, even if you hadn't seen The Karate Kid, you can still understand just how sad Danny is that Mr. Miyagi's no longer there, and he kind of reconnects with the spirit. Again, I guess he's like Yoda. There's lots of analogies, aren't there, to Star Wars? There's that Yoda moment where he's like the ghost of the Jedi, or Force ghost, whatever you call them. And it's quite a sad moment, but it's quite bittersweet, and he remembers the good moments of his relationship with this elderly karate champion. And that, I'm not gonna lie, Dan, a couple of times I may have welled up a little bit, because it is quite a touching moment. It's a sad way of life. People get on, they get old, and they pass away, and it's kind of like that grandfather feel, granddad feel, where if anyone's grown up with grandparents, that's Mr. Miyagi. He passed away. It's very, very sad, but he has the fondest memories of obviously growing up and being taught. And I think that's the actual episode where was it his birthday that was released? Anyway, of the actor. And it's all very sad and solemn, but it's quite a joyful moment, because they then, to say, layer in flashbacks to the films and his wise words. And that's a touching moment. I thought it was very well handled, and I really do enjoy it. So that's my first moment. Bit of a somber one, but nonetheless it's a very touching one. I think you mentioned, Dan, season 3, Chosen's throwback to Karate Kid 2. Now, I think I've only seen Karate Kid 2 once, and never again, because I don't recall it being particularly exciting or interesting. But Danny ends up going back to where Mr. Miyagi was born, and he does in the film, and in the season he goes back there to try and win a car dealership or something, a contract, because it's about to be outdone. And he comes across Chosen. Now, Chosen comes across a bit of a hard nut, and he is the baddie of that film. But he proper wanted to kill Johnny in the or Danny, so say Danny in the film, and so he's face to face with this killer. Anyway, couple of minutes go by, different cutscenes showing all around the village, and he end up, as you say, down in this dojo, and you think it's gonna be lights out, and sure enough, there's all manner of weapons on the wall, and he teaches him a new trick, which is like a paralyzing trick or something, about pressure points, and of course it ends up, we've already done spoiler alert, but it ends up being used on Kreese, where his knee looks like it's lights out for Danny, and he uses this new trick that he's learned from Chosen. And I think that's an interesting, again, flip on the character, where you see him in the films and he's a murderer and he wants to stab Danny in the film, but in so many years later, they've grown up, he's apologetic, he's sorry for his efforts. It's quite a bittersweet, again, moment where they reconcile as older men now. They've moved on, and he gives something back to Danny, and it's a great. I didn't really get that whole. I thought, if I'm honest, Dan, that whole couple of episodes felt a bit shoehorned for me.
Yeah,
let's fly him out to Japan, or let's fly him out to kind of follow on to the next film. But that part really did feel like there was closure, and I really liked that one. And the beginning then of season 3. So where's Miguel down at the beginning of season 3?
The poor soul. He's in the hospital. He's not in a good way. We'll talk about that fight scene shortly. It's one of my favourites. But end of season 2, he's been pump kicked over a balcony essentially by Robbie, and he's hit the sort of banister. Another
reason why we dislike Robbie.
Yeah, prick.
He's a dick. Absolute dick. Well, he's paralysed, and I think a good couple of episodes in, Johnny sets it upon himself to rehabilitate him and to get him back on his feet and get him eventually to the end of the season where he's back fighting for the honour of the dojo in whatever form that looks like. And I think there's a really good couple of touching scenes where he's on pulleys and harnesses and trying to get him walking. And they end up going, what, fuck it, let's go to a rock concert. He's at the rock concert, and they do a selfie, all that kind of stuff. And he it's just like a really good touching moment. Johnny fails as a sensei in the previous season. Everything goes to pot. He loses the dojo. He fails as a boyfriend to his mum, which sounds weird to say out loud, and he ends up slipping back into old ways. But he finds, again, redemption through Miguel in his rehabilitation, ends up becoming that father figure, which he was always needing to be, to the point where Miguel ends up walking again. Again, a tear was shed down. I'm a modern man, I don't mind admitting that. And it was just a lovely moment where he's vindicated, and he's shown for being a good guy. And deep down, he really is a good guy. Just he's got a tough exterior, but yeah, that's probably one of my favourite moments. Is where Johnny is now the saviour again, and all these rights in the world, and Miguel can walk again. It's great.
One of Gavin's favourite moments too is the gig. He says, "Love the power of rock healing a broken back," because Miguel's in his wheelchair, but he's tapping his foot, and for the first sort of couple of episodes, he's sort of struggling, isn't he? Like, say, he's sort of up in a harness, struggling to walk. They were setting his shoe on fire. It's quite brutal, really. But at the same time, it's a great moment. And another favourite moment from Leighton is he says, "Right, where do I start? Has to be getting the old Cobras back together for their final road trip. As with all of Cobra Kai, it had nostalgia, comedy, history, action, and of course, tragedy. The other was Johnny getting it on with Miguel's mum and wishing I was Johnny even more than normal."
I think the old Cobras has really a bittersweet episode. It's really quite sad.
It really is. And Rob Garrison, who played Tommy, the poor gentleman that actually dies in that episode, he passed away not long after, because I think they actually dedicated an episode to him.
Oh, was he poorly himself, was he?
Yeah. Wow. I'm not too sure what he died of, but he was in hospital, and I think he had kidney and liver failure. He was in quite ill health sort of towards the end, which is quite sad. But
makes it even more sad.
Yeah, but there was an episode, I can't remember what episode it was, but it was dedicated to him in season 3 at the end, which is quite sad. So on to the I guess the big one, really, Alex. Favourite fight scenes?
Yeah, man. I thought I got 2 for me.
I've only got 1, but then I think you've probably got one which we can sort of dive into. But it's a bit of a mix-up. Our listeners didn't necessarily choose the same ones.
Oh.
Okay. So I'm going to dive in, and of course it has to be the season 2 finale, the school fight.
Oh, okay.
It just has to be. It's just so brutal. It's savage. So, I mean, if anyone's still listening and hasn't watched Cobra Kai yet, you need to go watch this. It's just so well choreographed.
Yeah.
High school, the backdrop for no holds barred rumble between Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai teams, and woe to anyone, even the teachers who get in the way of flying fists and feet. There's no rules, there's no regulations, and the brawl is just spilling through the hallways and up the stairs, where ultimately we get an Empire Strikes Back moment. But, it all sparks off from Tori and Sam. It's my two least favourite characters. This is probably why I probably hate them so much.
Come to blows.
Yeah, I mean, this is the spark that ignites the dojo versus dojo powder keg, is the best way to put it, as I've put in my notes. And it's just one very angry, jealous teenage girl. Tori, who's at the time the newest member of Cobra Kai and enjoys the dojo's "No Mercy" slogan. She's even against Johnny for sort of speaking out against that mindset.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tori, who's been dating Johnny's protege, Miguel, which seemed to be perfect, except that he's sort of still hung up on Sam, the daughter of Miyagi-Do instructor Daniel LaRusso. Meanwhile, Sam's been dating Miyagi-Do member Robbie. It's just so many love triangles in this as well. It gets a bit confusing, doesn't it? Who, is Johnny's estranged son. So, and you see where the sort of strange conflicts between everyone. And there's a moment where Tori catches her rival kissing Miguel during a drunken farewell at a summer party. And when they return to school, she's out for blood. And, Robbie also isn't too thrilled. He thinks that Miguel's taken advantage of Sam. And naturally, the two boys who just happen to be the star pupils of each dojo master, they have their own personal rumble, and the action climaxes with Robbie literally kicking Miguel over the railing of a second-story landing and causing him to land onto the banister below. Although he ends up in hospital, his condition is unknown when the season ends, but we know that he's okay in season 3. Tori's sort of bent on defeating her opponent, that she whips out the banded spikes, as I mentioned earlier. And, Sam takes one to the tricep. She's got some nice wounds there. But it's such a great fight scene.
There's also the corridors down. I think when I was watching it, I thought it was reminiscent of Daredevil. With the corridor scenes. It wasn't one continuous shot, but it was a mix of comedy, silliness, slapstick. Who's the older guy who joins Cobra Kai? He ends up becoming
Stingray.
He's doing interviews and he's become a security guard, and obviously the fight interrupts it. And there's a brilliant scene where he just waltzes around, just breaking up the fight with the kids, because he's just disarming these teenagers by a jab to the back of the knee, or a headlock, or a smash against some lockers. And he's just, it's almost a bit like a slapstick hangover type-esque with Zach Galifianakis, isn't it? It's that kind of character, and it is really funny. And then there's the serious parts where blood is spilled and people get paralyzed. But it's got so many nods to so many different genres, all within the space of what? It's nearly enough a 10-minute fight, isn't it? Really,
it is 10 minutes. You're right. That's in my notes.
Yeah,
the entire brawl lasts about 10 minutes.
It's a long, long time.
You also get Hawk as well. He's kicking ass, and then it ends up with him fighting Dimitri, and Dimitri essentially puts him through a trophy cabinet, if I recall.
He does. He wins. He finally wins. Of course, the many a time in the seasons they've gone face to face, and Dimitri scurries away, but no, he stands up, and I think he kicks him in the chest, and he goes flying. And in the next season, of course, we find out Dimitri's new hero, and Hawk is back to being downtrodden, which is an interesting turn of events for the character.
Yeah. Oh man, Dimitri ends up sort of dating the one of the hot girls, the popular girls, which is a great twist for his character, I think.
It is.
But that's my favourite fight scene, and I think we've got others here which we can sort of dive into as well from our listeners. But what's yours?
Yeah, interesting enough, Dan, they're both from season 1, I think, where they put most of their finest writing. You're going to right, because you need to break the mould. But the first one is episode 5, season 1, where the canteen fight scene.
Yes.
So Miguel is there's often the exchange or quips with Kyler, who is phenomenally written and acted. He's the massive prick who ends up bullying the kids, and he thinks he's like the best dressed and the most popular kid, and so everyone's scared of him. There's nothing kind of redeeming about this individual, and so I think Sam basically kicks him back because they're not interested. Kyler, go away. So he ends up spreading some rumours about her, and everyone in the school turns on her to think she's a hussy, I think is an old term to use, probably the most polite one to use, which obviously is not fair. And Miguel knows this, ends up standing up for her honour. Well, the fight kicks off, but of course Kyler doesn't realise that one of the people he's been bullying has actually been coached by Johnny, and the fight kicks off in a canteen. And everyone's there, as of course these days, phones out, straight onto YouTube. And Miguel suddenly finds his groove, and he's kicking shit all over the place. And there's kids flying around and into tables and over tables. And Miguel ends up, darting over tables, over chairs, kicking chairs into people. It's a really, really good scene. And talk about it now really gets my blood pumping, because it's such a great defining moment for the character. He stands up to the bully, and he's evolved into the prime student for Cobra Kai. Where it ends up, I think he rolls over a table, grabs a tray mid-roll, and ends up smacking Kyler right across the chops. And he just ends up like flying. Oh, it's brilliant, Dan.
It's so satisfying, isn't it?
So good. Well, of course, then he gets cast off to the principal's office and whatever. But it's such a good film. The segment, Dan, it's just so well written, well choreographed, well acted. Zolo Mariduena, I probably haven't pronounced. Apologies. Again, I've got a touch of Dan there. I can't pronounce that. But the actor is so good. But he's clearly put a shift in, and he could do the moves. And again, shout out to the actor Kyler, because he's an absolute knobhead. Of course, he rears his face in season 3, midway mark again. Just when we think we've forgotten about him. But yeah, just the uprising and the justice which is served is phenomenal. But hopefully, for those of you that are still listening and haven't seen it, you don't have to wait long. It's 5 episodes in, but it's such a great set of scenes.
Totally agree.
And in the final episode, Dan, of the season, is a competition, and this is because they've turned. I mean, the whole thing is turning on its head. It's now told from Johnny's perspective, right? But Danny's there with Robbie, the idiot. And then you've got Johnny with Miguel. And this is all about the competition back in 84 and who's right and who's wrong. And as you say, I think at the beginning of the episode, Dan, Johnny's like, look, don't cheat. Don't take the easy way out. Don't do the cheap shots. Do the right thing. And of course, that's harking back to Danny when he's in Miyagi-Do. And I think it's the same moves that Danny did back in the 84 film. And it's full of nostalgia. And I think, again, I've used this term quite a lot, but it is bittersweet at the end where Johnny's dojo wins, which is great because he's made his way back into the All Valley tournament. Of course, they were blacklisted forever. He's made it back, and they've won it. But at his son's demise, his son loses, and of course he beats his rival. But at what expense? And it's if they were never going to make a season 2 or 3, and they hung their hat purely on that season, they gave it a bloody good go. And I think that's such a good kind of rounding of the season to show just kind of the stark contrast now to people learning as the tables are turned what it's like to be on the receiving end. And okay, you're a winner, but at what cost? Did you cheat? And should you have won? And did you do it the right way? And then there are victims. It's not just about the people in the competition. It's about the friends and the family and the loved ones and colleagues. And it's such a good a good set of scenes that, again, for me, it's I always wanted the second and third season to have a further competitions, because I thought that would be the boiling pot of where it all come together. But of course, no, there's fallouts in people's houses and in amusement arcades and beaches or whatever. But I really liked the competition, so I hope to do another one. I'll talk about that in a sec. But I really liked the other side of the coin.
Yeah, nice. So first up, we got Sean. He says, trashing of the LaRusso house in series 3 finale. It's just some pure chaos. You know, there's the people being thrown through like shelves, windows, glass tables. It's madness.
I mean, what a house to trash though, Dan, right?
Yeah, man. Poor Daniel, but I mean,
glass
he's minted.
Everywhere. Yeah, he'll be able to replace easy. That's what you should settle. But yeah, off the hallway, down the hallways, and there's kids everywhere just fighting, being thrown through glass tables and vases cracked overheads. It's great.
So good. Choice. Kelly also agrees with Sean, says the fight scene at the end of season 3 being amazing, but she also loved LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence kicking ass in the car garage.
That was good.
I think that's when they're hunting for Robbie, isn't it? They're looking for Robbie.
It is. Should have left him, to be honest, mate. They should have just left him and gone, you know what? He's gone now, guys. Let's just continue with the season without Robbie. But no, they went to go look for him, didn't they?
Yeah. Leighton again, he says, it's a tough one. The flashbacks to the All Valley tournament winning moment for LaRusso in the original film are hard to beat. The fight scene at the house when the packs join together and become one are heartwarming as well as badass. But there is probably only one scene that will come top. The school fight has everything. Action, thrills, edge-of-the-seat stuff, a horrific final moment that has you literally wishing time away to see Series 3. And the follow-on that was cheesy, predictable, and as nostalgic as we knew it would be. And then lastly is Gavin, who also agrees the school fight that closes season 2 is awesome. So before we sort of theorise and ask the question about series 4, favourite character development?
Same as you, Dan. I talked about it before. Eli.
Yeah, it's Hawk. He was born with a cleft lip, surgically repaired, which has resulted in a scar running from his lip to nose. At some point prior to the events of Cobra Kai, he meets Dimitri, who, say they're best friends. So I'm sort of just covering old ground here, not to alienate our listeners. Fan of Harry Potter, Doctor Who, and Dimitri similarly enjoys the same things. Poor Eli, he's often bullied because of his scar, where he's very quiet. He's a quiet individual. Bullied student who joins Cobra Kai, where he flips the script. Johnny sort of pokes a bit of fun at him, and he turns up next day, mohawk, the tattoo on the back, which is great. And but he's quickly corrupted by the no mercy mentality of Cobra Kai, which makes him he becomes quite aggressive. He's a bully, which is quite. I find him a fascinating character to watch. At the same time, it's very uncomfortable because he becomes the very thing that he hates. Yeah. He's picking on people.
But you find it with bullies, though, don't you? You find bullies will often bully themselves, and they go too far, I think, to overcompensate. Not that I'm speaking from perspective, I'm not, but that's what you hear, isn't it? And I kind of understand that, because you can see that the character is downtrodden, but then ends up, I guess, bullying others because he now wants to be in that position of power. And you're right, you can empathise with him, but you know that it's from a wrong position. He's not doing it the right way to regain that power. It's not the power he's seeking. I think is probably the better way to describe it.
Yeah, so it's uncomfortable because I was bullied at school, and it's not nice. And there was one time I fought back, and I think that's sort of where you draw the line, really. You don't really want to become that person that's been picking on you. But I mean, story for another time. I don't want to dive too deep into my background because it's an uncomfortable story to sort of relive. But yeah, anyway, he's sort of he's quite aggressive. He's a bully. He's corrupted. And there's a moment where John Kreese brings back the new recruits, which includes Kyler and his sort of his little crew, I guess.
Yeah. And
he is put up against Brooks, I think that's his name. And he sort of wants to prove a point. Hawk goes into this fight. He's looking at Kyler and he's like, I'm going to make a point out of this guy. And it's savage. He kicks the shit out of him and he is punching into this guy's face. I mean, you don't see it, but it's going to be nasty, right?
Yeah.
His knuckles are covered in blood. It's pretty grim. But I think through series 3, you start to see his conscience starts to kick in. You get flickers. He's like, this isn't right.
He questions, doesn't he, Kreese's background? Is this are we really doing this? What about the honour? What about doing the right thing? And of course, Kreese is like, no, you show no mercy. You show no weakness. You basically kill the opposition, where Johnny always stops short, and he's always there is honour, but also, you show no mercy, but ultimately there's honour. But Kreese, like, no, you eliminate. I can't remember what's scored on the wall under Kreese's new dojo, but effectively you eliminate the enemy. And yeah, you can see just the confusion on his face, and you can see he's torn. He's Cobra Kai through and through now. He's made who he is, and he's someone that obviously that he wants to be. But I think Kreese goes too far, and you're right. He's visibly struggling with that new take on life and on what it means to be part of that dojo.
I mean, he essentially goes full circle throughout the 3 seasons. He finally sees the error of his ways in the LaRusso house brawl. He sees his best friend Dimitri again about to have his arm broken, and he's like, no, I'm not going to let that happen again. I feel guilty for doing it the last time. This is my friend. I'm going to help him, and he does.
Do you find that sorry to interrupt there, Dan, but I just want to capture that thought process. Do you think that, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think it's great to get that kind of that full circle experience, but do you think that is a genuine reaction from that character? Basically what you're seeing, did you see that one coming at the brawl? Did you feel like it was a genuine kind of move, or did you feel like it was a little bit forced? Albeit we're both obviously happy with where he's come from or where he's going, but did you feel like that was a natural thing? And that's a leading question, but did you think it?
Yeah, I think it was a genuine action. And I say, I only think that because as you sort of go through season 3, like you start to see him sort of question things. You see his conscience start to kick in. He's starting to sort of do the questioning of, is this right? Is this wrong? And yeah, I think it's probably a genuine reaction. He's gone, this isn't right. I'm not going to let them break Dimitri's arm again. I'm going to help my friend, and I'm going to team up, and I'm going to kick some ass.
Okay. I just thought, just with his bullying of Eli, I did wonder. Sorry, of
Dimitri,
that's the one. Bullying of Dimitri. I didn't feel though it was. I thought it was almost out of the blue. I didn't see enough kind of recognition that they were repairing their friendship, but. I was happy where it left off. As you say, he didn't want him to be hurt again. He stepped in and they ended up going back to back and fighting their way out of the house. But I don't know. I thought it was a bit rushed. But either way, I'm happy where we ended up.
Yeah, I mean, he ultimately ends up joining Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang in training against Cobra Kai, and he's reconciled with his old friends, which is great. But I'm sure we'll sort of talk a little bit more about that in the season 4 questions, because there's a couple of questions I think are going to be interesting talking points, but that's my favourite character development. I presume that's probably yours as well, because Hawk was one of your favourite characters.
Yeah.
So Leighton's was second series was Stingray. What a legend! The forest scene was class. Overall, I would say Johnny. I know that's predictable, but that's what this series is. He's developing all the time from good to bad, badass to kind, enemy to friend. Watch this space.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that is you can see Danny and how he's ended up whiter than white at the beginning, so to speak, but then ends up almost a villain. And they always are on the other side of the coin, and they always go through the polar opposites. But yeah, I agree. Johnny is the good guy.
I think Stingray, or Raymond, is quite a fascinating character. He's a bit of a strange one at that. I think sort of character development wise, I'd want to see him a little bit more, maybe in season 4. You know, he lives alone with his mother. We don't know what his relationship is with his father, or if his father's deceased. His mother's always overly worried about her son and not allowing him to do activities or demanding he pay his share of housing. He seems to have stood up to his mother's like overprotectiveness to some extent, where he finally enrolls with Cobra Kai. When he was approaching Johnny about enrolling in Cobra Kai, he says that he can afford tuition as he saved money from living rent free. Which is, I wish we could all do that, right? This shows Raymond has some sense of thriftiness. Johnny does not seem excited about this kind of agreement, but he agrees to allow Raymond to enroll anyway because he's a paying customer.
Cash is cash.
So on to questions for season 4.
Yeah.
I've plucked these out of the air. Do you think we'll get a Tori versus Samantha? Will they settle things once and for all?
I think they will, but I don't think they'll see eye to eye on the end of it. I think they've gone too far. The hatred is quite evident. It's that kind of hatred which doesn't really make any kind of sense. But there was nothing there to begin with. They've only ever known conflict. I think they got into a fight when they first met, didn't they? At the country club?
Yeah.
Season 2. So yeah, I think they will definitely come to a head. But that's perhaps I'm showing my cards too early. But I think it'll end up at a tournament.
The All Valley.
Yeah, I think they have to do an All Valley to round off season 4 because they've come to face a couple of times, and Tori's won over Samantha a couple, and then there was in the dojo. The new Miyagi-Do is almost as a dead heat, wasn't it? They both kind of survived to fight another day. So I think that's been done now. And the fight scene at the school, I think for them to keep on fighting is a bit old. I don't think they're going to do anything new. I think the spin of Sam having anxiety was an interesting spin on that, and fair play, I would too if I was nearly killed at school. But I think they'll go face to face. I think at a tournament. That's the only thing they haven't done yet, and I think that's natural. Where I think season 4 is going to go. Or at least I hope it does.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know how long you can drag this rivalry out for. It just it'll get boring eventually. So I think naturally it has to come to an end in season 4. Do I think there'll be a bit of tragedy behind it? I'm still waiting for a bit of tragedy, Alex.
Someone's got to bite the dust.
This could be.
I don't know who that be. Well, I do wonder whether it be a Dimitri. Ooh. Could be a Hawk. Could be an unexpected Hawk.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, that would really fuck up people, I guess, to see those characters, because obviously Dimitri has always been kind of seen as the weak, and obviously then he's season 3 found his own, and he's now fighting alongside his peers. So perhaps that's what unites. I don't know. That's something they haven't looked at, have they? It's the demise of the characters. They've gone imprisonment. They've gone running away. They've gone paralysis. There's not much left.
No.
If you delve deep into the writer's handbook, the only thing you've got to do then is a demise.
Indeed. Robbie versus Miguel. Will they fight again?
Yeah, and let's hope Miguel kicks the shit out of Robbie, and Robbie then is resigned to the Mariana Trench.
Yeah, I totally agree. They will fight again. It's got to happen, and it's got to be a bit Miguel vengeance. Oh, this is a good question. If Cobra Kai is defeated, will it disband or just be taken back by Johnny?
I think it'd be a Johnny job, which sounds horrific saying that out loud.
Yeah,
I think Johnny will take back. I mean, it may not even be Cobra Kai at the end, right? I mean, I know he's got, was it Eagle Fang, which is an appalling name.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right, does it?
No, I think he'll probably take back Cobra Kai because he's always had that affiliation. I don't see him not doing that, even though Kreese has turned into something entirely opposite to what he knew and loved. I think he'll be back in the sensei seat teaching those kids.
Weed out the douchebags as well, like Tori.
Yeah.
Another good question. Now that Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang dojos have joined forces, will they stay together? It's an uneasy alliance, don't you think? I mean, we've seen that. We've seen over the series that, Danny and Johnny, they do come together. They start to show glimmers of friendship, but then there's something that ultimately forces them apart. I just don't see this being a long-term thing.
No. I think it's an alliance of necessity. I keep on going back to this. I mean, like egg on my face when we end up doing the season 4 review. All roads will lead to a competition. It's got to, because there's too many dojos in the Valley area. And so I reckon it's going to culminate in a competition, and you can't have that bigger dojo. So I think they're going to splinter off again, and all three are fighting against each other.
Yeah.
Now, who then ultimately fights for Eagle Fang and who fights for Miyagi-Do? Because it's going to come down to Cobra Kai, isn't it, as the other one? So who ends up becoming the champion of those two dojos, we'll have to see. But I think they'll splinter off. But I think it's a really interesting dynamic where, there's always that conflict and friction between Danny and Johnny. And there's going to be throughout season 4. But that alliance can't stay forever.
No,
the dojo just isn't big enough.
I mean, especially if we're going with the theory that Johnny's going to take Cobra Kai back once we get rid of Kreese. A couple of questions around our favourite character, Hawk. Will Hawk remain loyal to Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang? And Hawk versus Kyler, is it going to happen?
Yeah, because Kyler, I guess, stays behind, doesn't he, under Kreese?
Yes.
Probably. But again, if you're following the rules, if Hawk does come against Kyler, I think Hawk end up losing because, of course, he beat the shit out of him season 3. I think what's more realistic is probably a Kyler. Now, here we go. In the tournament, they probably haven't written in and going to look really idiotic when it comes around. But in the tournament, I think we all know and love and deserve. I think it'll be a Kyler versus Miguel final. I've said it. Let's hope I do a throwback to this episode of me talking. But I think it's going to be a Kyler versus Miguel. I don't think Hawk's going to be in there.
That's a great shout.
That'd be amazing writing, wouldn't it, mate? The flashback to the fight scene at the beginning, my favourite fight scene in season 1. But who would win that? I'd hate to be Kyler because he's such a knobhead.
Now, I only asked the question about Hawk remaining loyal. I just think there's something there that could maybe just distill him, Do
you reckon? Is he a spy?
I don't know. There is a theory running around that he's probably not necessarily that loyal. How much Kreese has gotten into Hawk? But as I say, we've seen that redemption, and we've seen him sort of question his conscience when he's doing these things. So
It could be a red herring, though, Dan.
It could be a red herring.
I mean, that's why I just feel it's a bit too rushed for him to be going to the aid of his old childhood friends when he's been kicking the shit out of them and breaking their arms or whatever. I wonder whether these flickers of conscience, so to say, whether they're just red herrings for the audience, and perhaps he's still reporting back to Kreese because he's very impressionable. He would be in that situation. So yeah, there might be something in that. Again, that'd be brilliant writing for this, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. 2 more questions. Is Kreese bringing Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3 into Cobra Kai Season 4? Because obviously we see Kreese on the phone. He's bringing someone back, but we don't know who. I mean, I've not watched Karate Kid 3. I'm not familiar with Terry Silver, but there is a fan theory that Terry Silver is Tori's dad. I'm not sure. I don't know if people clutch straws. I mean, there's obviously bigger fans of this pop culture series than me, but I mean, we've seen people always say like Chosen brought back from season 2 for a couple of episodes. It's maybe. And then last time,
tell a lie, Dan. I think I have seen it. So looking at old pictures online here, and he's got a slick back ponytail.
Yeah,
and I think I recognise it. I think I've seen Karate Kid 1, got bored of 2, and watched 3. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Perhaps Silver is, whether or not he is related to Tori, we shall see. But I think it's the writing's on the wall. I think that's definitely going to be the case.
Yeah. Last question. Could the next Karate Kid's Hilary Swank ever make a cameo in Cobra Kai? Because another fan theory is the character that she plays, Julie Pierce, is Tori's mum. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people like clutching at straws here, and but we don't know who Tori's mum is. We know that she's not well. Tori's looking after her, but we don't really see her.
No, you're right. Yeah, she's bedridden. She goes into a bedroom and she's got closed doors. Yeah, I think that one is clutching at straws. There is going to be, she's going to have some kind of link, I'm sure, into the bigger kind of universe, but I'm not quite sure it's that one.
But I don't know when season 4's due. I know they're probably in production now. I don't really know the timeline, Alex.
No, obviously things have been delayed, but yeah, no idea, Dan. No idea at all. Hopefully soon, because I've run out of things to watch. But no, it looks like, well, 6 days ago apparently looking like it's going to be the winter this year or Jan next. So they finished writing it, but they haven't filmed it yet. But of course, as we know, TV to film to the show could be quite quick, so it's not going to be a long drawn out thing.
Yeah, hopefully it's not rushed too much. I think through our discussions in this episode, there's some great theories. I think there's a lot that can go into fleshing these characters out, having some great moments. But I'm really excited. This is one of those things I say you sold to me, and I watched it, and I've really enjoyed it. So much so that I think, like Leighton, I'm wishing my time away for the next season.
I was really surprised, Dan, at how much I liked it. It's been a good, easy 25 years, getting so really old since I've seen the original films, and I was a wee nipper when I first watched them. And I think we said this before, Dan, how you actively avoid jumping on the bandwagon on the hype.
Yeah.
You don't want to be one of those people that just get on the bandwagon for the sake of it. And so I put it off. I thought, you know what, I'm going to watch. I've got nothing better to do. I've watched all of the other TV shows. It's bloody brilliant. And again, if you hadn't seen the films, you don't have to. I think they stand alone on their own, but there's an added element of nostalgia if you have. But I don't think it's so much that it alienates the audience. I think it just adds another dimension to it. So yeah, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but the music's phenomenal, the acting's great, the writing, apart from Robbie's, phenomenal. I do hate it. I hate him. But otherwise, it's all so good. The tone is great. The comedy is just, yeah, it's all so well executed.
And so I'll go back to the start, like what I was saying. You don't need to like the films to enjoy this. You know,
No.
As soon as I sort of dived in, watched the first couple of episodes, that was it. I was done. I think I watched about 5 episodes back to back. My missus was out running. She didn't get into it, unfortunately. I've tried.
No way.
Tried. She's not into it, but I'll keep trying.
And the episodes are. I think you need to keep on pushing down. Show her the error of her ways. But I mean, the episodes are quite palatable. I think they're 35 minutes, aren't they? Something 40 minutes.
Yeah,
not long.
And I think the finales are generally sort of a little bit longer by about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We're sort of talking about 45, 50 minutes. But yeah, no, they're really good. There wasn't really one episode where I didn't enjoy it.
No, none of them felt. I mean, obviously they can't all be at 100 miles an hour, and some of them did feel a little bit fillery. Again, maybe around Robbie and how he's in prison or some shit. But in the main, yeah, there's always something to hook you into it. It's just fine because they're so short and because they are packed full of great writing and character development. You just keep and end up going from episode to episode. Before you blink it, you're halfway through a season. Before you might as well finish off the rest of the season, and before you know it, then you're on season 2. Well, shit, I was expecting that. This is the second day after my dinner. I now can't go to sleep because I need to finish season 2 because I need to know how it ends and so on and so forth. So I think I blitzed through it in about a week and a half, and that was with a day or two breaks.
Same.
And that was easily done. So yeah, I'll probably have to rewatch it, Dan, just because so much happens before the next season comes out. But yeah, it's one of those ones which you can easily watch and get really engrossed into. And yeah, thoroughly recommend.
Yeah, so that rounds it up for this episode. What a massive episode. Absolutely bump.
Yeah. Look, if you didn't like it, I'd be really interested to, apart from, Claire's opinion, Dan, it'd be good to get people's perspectives on perhaps what turned them off. Perhaps you don't want to get onto the hype. Perhaps you've heard too much about it. We haven't really helped. But then why are you still listening to this episode all this time in? But no, it'd be really good, all joking aside, to hear your opinion on perhaps why you're not interested. But for us, can't fault it.
No, so good. So good. And if people want to get in touch and give us their thoughts, we're always up for doing another episode on this stuff. You can get in contact on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at OnTheTopicPod. We're on Gmail, on the Topic Podcast at gmail.com. And of course, we've got Anchor, where you can be a part of the show and leave us a voice message, and we'll just plug you in like we have with previous listeners.
Yes, please.
Get involved. Upcoming episodes, we'll be doing another lockdown special. I know we're sort of getting back to normality. We're getting vaccinated now. I know you've had your jab, Alex. I'm still waiting.
I have.
My other half's had hers. I'm eagerly waiting to get mine so we can get back behind the mic together in the same room. But, people still, if you're still stuck at home, we'll be bringing an episode where we can tell you things to watch. I'm sure loads has happened in the last year where we can tell you to binge watch and games to play,
binge watch volume 2. Yeah, there'll be loads of it. And I'll be really looking forward to that one. So please get in touch. Let us know perhaps what's tickling your fancy whilst you're sat at home or socially isolating.
And we'll have part 2 of our Falcon and Winter Soldier.
We have.
Keep your thoughts coming in.
It's a great one. I think we're both thoroughly enjoying it, Dan, as we said in the first episode, and really looking forward to how they round off. It's a 6-episode run, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah. So previous episode we've covered episodes 1 to 3. A lot's already happened in those 3 episodes. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet and you are watching Falcon and Winter Soldier, go back and revisit.
Go have a listen. Dan provides plenty of Easter eggs, as he usually does with WandaVision. So have a look at those.
Yeah.
And then we've got some other bits and pieces to pick up, Dan, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're both still trying to line up some more guests for the future. Just need to finalise a few details, I guess.
Yeah. But if you guys are interested in any other topics or anything that you want us to cover, then please get in touch and let us know. But otherwise, we've got plenty to keep you busy as you go out for your allocated daily exercise. As all good citizens of the world, you are, of course.
Indeed.
There you go. But no, for another week, I'll be karate chopping my way into my bed because it's that time of the day. I'm Alex.
And I'm going to be waxing off. I'm Dan.
And we'll see you next time.